Grandpa, for teaching me that. And, I'll miss you, and I'll see you again in heaven, whenever that will be. Thank you.
Next will be Heidi Koblenz, and that's our daughter, Daryl and Joyce's daughter, or our daughter.
In case you missed that, I'm Dad's daughter. So, it's just a privilege to share a little bit about some memories, people, and relationships. That's just been the theme here today. He invested in my life in different ways, mostly just in time spent. I worked down south driving combine, and he would come through on his broom talking. That was always a good time. And then later I moved over to Thailand and spent some years over there. And this was a little while ago. It wasn't quite so easy to connect as it is nowadays. You couldn't just FaceTime. And it was a little harder to call and talk. But Grandpa faithfully called me. I'm sure it involved maybe a prepaid phone card, long list of numbers to do it. But he figured out how to get through to Thailand. And the phone would ring, and they'd say, "Heidi, it's for you." And I knew it was a good chance it was Grandpa calling to see how I was doing way over there, and he wanted to know what was going on, just all the details of my life, and that was such a blessing, such a connection with home, and such a blessing that he would call me and talk to me over there. And then the last few months, I had the privilege of Grandma and Grandpa a couple different days, and that was such an honor, and I'm just so thankful for that. I was able to take my children up. Grandpa would tell them stories. He would sing them Michael Finnegan song, and he would feed them, try to feed them. I'm just thankful for that time and the memories that I have. And love you, Grandpa.
Thank you. Next will be Caleb Beachy, and that's Rick and Connie Beachy's son.
Our family being from Florida, and then we had they had kittens, and I was told they said we could find my way in the hospital because I guess I couldn't stay away from the kittens too much. But I remember staying at their house, and I remember just a couple years ago, being my dad's son, my grandpa would always ask me, "Are you going to be a preacher one day? Are you going to be a preacher one day?" And I had a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to do a little bit of preaching. And I remember sitting down and asking him, and I said, because he used to always like to talk about his preaching love, and he talked about John 3:16, his favorite verse, and I know something that you've been hearing about a lot, but I think that's one thing that described Grandpa was his love for the Lord, and love for his family, and love for people. And so, I'll never remember that, just kind of sitting there, and he just very emphatically said he would preach about love in John 3:16. So anyways, I just wanted to share that. Thanks.
Next, we'll hear from Peter Headings, and that's Steve and Judy Headings' son.
Know where to start, but I choose to remember him for his laugh. He had this incredible, boisterous laugh that could just fill the room and bring joy to everyone. Perhaps the only person that has a better laugh than Grandpa would be Larry Warfel. Back in the 90s, we lived in Puerto Rico. Grandpa and Grandma came down to visit us. And specifically, I remember that trip because after dinner one evening, we were all cleaning up inside, and Grandpa and Grandma were lounging outside on our saggy couch on our front porch. And all of a sudden, we hear this ruckus, just incredible loud noise. It could be equated to a calf birthing, but we won't go there. The whole family rushes out to the porch, thinking, oh, Grandpa must have fallen, Grandma must be in danger or something. And we get around the corner, and there's Grandpa and Grandma huddled on a couch, big old alligator tears coming down their cheeks. They can't catch their breath. And holding on their lap is a book by Barbara Johnson. For those that are brave enough to admit you have a Barbara Johnson book in your library, I'm sure you can understand what they were laughing about, so we won't go there. But that's my fondest memory of Grandpa. Just seeing him unable to even control himself, alligator tears, and Grandma right there with him, having the absolute time of their life. So, there's a lot to be sad about. There's a lot to be scared of in this world today. But there's also a lot to laugh about, and I'm thankful every day for the joy of his memory. Thank you.
Next will be Emily Byler, and she's
I just wrote down some memories. It will always be a special memory how Grandpa always lit up and had a huge smile on his face whenever he saw me or my family or any of us really at the home, at Rockabilly's home. He would always make a quick beeline to come greet us right after church, and he would make sure that he would also make sure that we would go see Grandma and go visit her in her room too. He was always looking out for other people. Looking back, I can see how it was such a treasure. Grandma sitting in the dining hall at Rock of Ages. Really sweet to have my family up there with me. And I'm also so thankful for all the many stories and the pictures that he would show us. And he would always love to show us all of his cutout pictures and all of his little collected over the years. And like it's been said so much, he really loved us children and grandchildren, great-grandchildren so much. And whenever Grandpa came around his family, he always had such a big smile, and he was always ready to give you a hug and say hi and just see how you were. So those are some of my favorite memories of Grandpa.
okay. Next is Byron Smooker, and that is Steve and Bonnie Smooker's son.
I have a son who is skilled at making paper airplanes, and on Sunday in church, he tore a little piece of paper and made this little airplane, and he started flying it around a little bit with his hand. And it made me think of a memory that I have that may or may not be true, but it's about Grandpa. We were in, as my memory goes, we were in the Hopewell Church. We were on the right-hand side, sort of probably 2/3 of the way up. And I had an airplane, either a toy or maybe I'd made a paper airplane. And I started flying it around with my hands. And Grandpa, my parents were nowhere to be found in this memory. Grandpa told me to stop. And evidently, maybe I was 5 or 6. And evidently I disobeyed and kept doing it. And he grabbed me, took me, and marched me out. And the memory's a little fuzzy here, but I think he might have given me a spanking. Now, when I told my mom this memory years ago, she said, no, that never happened. For sure, you just dreamed that. So it might be a real memory, or it might be not a memory. That's true. But the interesting thing about it, the notable thing about that story is it's very out of character for Grandpa, whether it happened or not. That's not usually how he interacted with his grandchildren, as you've heard. He was kind to us, he was encouraging to us, and he was also a little bit silly. There was a silly side to him. It's already been mentioned. He loved his Portland Trail Blazers. I remember when we'd be out shooting baskets, he'd come. He loved to do that. He had this trick. I don't know if any of you all remember this. He'd have like a quarter, and he'd make it disappear and reappear. You remember that? And then he had this song, was maybe more and more common the older he got. And my wife even didn't even think that he used to do that. But he did that long ago. And I just remember it ends with Jehoshaphat. That's his last part of his song there. He was very kind, and as you've heard, he was very proud of his grandchildren. He loved his wife. He followed Jesus. He raised my mom, which is I will, as Proverbs 1 says, I can rise up and call my mom blessed for sure, and by extension, I will also bless my grandpa. He was worthy of that blessing. And I'm very privileged and glad to be a part of his family.
Okay, thank you for sharing. I'm going to share a little bit. I was that fish that Dad got, Mark. Yeah, I was considered the naughty one, but like I said, the third favorite son. We moved back, as far as telephone calls, I thought I was the only one he called. I guess I knew he called everybody else. But he would call me, and we always, hi. Sorry, some people that I know. He would call me, and I knew it was Dad. And every time that Dad called, I would answer, Headings Pizza. And he would order. It's like Headings Pizza. And it was the same pizza every time. I like a pepperoni and politics, and then caller ID on I guess, their smartphones to know that it was him. We moved back to Iowa in 2000. So those 20 years that we've been back, 21 years, didn't have a lot of contact, not a lot of physical contact with Mom and Dad. But we did all we could to come back in the summers. And I think we were here almost every summer in those 20 years. And a lot of it was to see our children, but a lot of it was to see my parents too. And those are really, really good memories that I had. I cherish those memories a lot. I'm just going to talk about one of the memories that I had just a couple weeks ago, it was this summer, when we were out this summer. And I knew that my dad was going downhill a little bit. And I had been around him quite a bit, and it was one of those things that I asked Steve and I asked some of the other siblings, is it okay if I take Dad out on a little ride? And it's like, well, yeah, it was okay. So it probably took about 20 minutes to get him from his chair to the car, and that was the hardest part of the ride. But it took him some time, and when we got him in the car, we did this twice, and I asked Dad when we got in the car, Dad, where do you want to go? And he gave me some places that he'd like to go. So he wanted to go around the Aurora area, just kind of some of the areas, and I could tell that he was really, really enjoying it. And we had a lot of good conversation. We talked. If he'd want to see something, we'd stop and on one of those little trips, we did a couple little. It was Wallace Road, and that was one of his favorite little trips. Purposely went over the Wheatland Ferry. He was like a little child, just anticipating that, just getting on that ferry and going over, and he was just in awe of everything that was going on and how this little boat could carry us across, this big car across. We went up and we visited the school, Western Mennonite, where he was courting Mom. One of his comments was, boy, things really look different, and they had changed a lot. But then we drove back to the area where the old buildings were, and we sat there for a long time. And just remembered how he chased Mom. I read Mom's diary, I know this. Dad was, yeah, he just chased Mom. But he eventually caught her. Good job, Mom. You did a good job. But we reminisced. He talked about the old gym and some of the basketball games that he remembered playing, and they're just good memories there. Wow, yeah. And I didn't know a lot of the stuff that he said, but he was just happy to be there. Even if everything looked changed, part of his life was there. We also stopped by at his old house. Did he live there? Some or not? He might have been. It was a place where my grandmother and grandfather lived on Wallace Road. We stopped there. There's two little driveways. We went into the one driveway and we just talked about that big hill that we used to go down as kids, and And he was so happy because the house is beautiful. The people that are living there have done an awesome job. And we just kind of looked at some. We didn't get out because getting down out of the car would take 20, 30 minutes. So we didn't get out. But he pointed to certain rooms and he said, oh, that's where Mom and Dad this is my dad talking. Mom and Dad used to eat breakfast. This is where these things happen. And we talked about the little orchard that was next to it, just some good memories with Dad. And on one of those trips, one of the things I know that Dad enjoyed eating ice cream, so we saw a Dairy Queen. And I said, Dad, would you like to have some ice cream? And he said, yeah, that'd be good. So he didn't want the largest one, and I'm glad he didn't get the largest one because it takes him a long time to do it. So he chose a small ice cream cone, and I chose whatever I chose. And as we were sitting there, we just kind of stopped a little bit, and as we were sitting there, as we were sitting there, my dad looks at me and says, Daryl, yeah, what, Dad? This has been the best day ever. And I'm thinking now, when he passed away and he met Jesus, he probably talked to Jesus and said, hey, Jesus, what, Maynard? This has been the best day ever. And Jesus says, come on in. So thank you.
We'll join our loved ones and rise forever. Oh, this is just what heaven means to me. And then at last we'll see the face of Jesus, and before an image of others just free. But when they crown him Lord of all, I'll be there. And this is just what heaven means to me. What day 'twill be when we get over yonder and join the throne around the crystal sea. We'll join our loved ones and rise forever. Oh, this is just what heaven means to me. Oh, this is just what heaven means to me.
You've been a very kind audience. It's been a bit of a long time, but the family has really enjoyed you sharing this time with us. And our pain is lessened as we share, as we laugh, as we cry together. There's now going to be a viewing. Just a little housekeeping here. We're coming through the front aisle, the middle aisle, heading out there. So if you plan to go to the cemetery, which is right here, just step outside and converse quietly outside as the rest come through. If you don't plan to go out to the graveyard, there's a luncheon provided. Just take a right once you get out to the main entry here, and people will serve you your luncheon. Everyone's welcome to the luncheon. And at this time, Brother Marvin Ketchum will be in charge of this next part.
We shall be